Welcome to Redchurch Cafe. I'm Terry Cooke, CEO of the Community Foundation. This is part of a series that we call Vital Chats, which is an opportunity to bring people together in the community, talk about what's going on in Hamilton, different thematic areas. It's definitely related to the Vital Signs report that we publish and produce with the SPEC annually, really talking about the trajectory of Hamilton, both its challenges and where momentum is happening. And today, it's my pleasure to moderate a conversation about music, the music industry in Hamilton, and I get to do it with two friends, which is a real pleasure, because this is a small town, right? And I will do formal introductions, but I need to tell you that Tom Wilson, who's an icon in this town, and it sadly is the same old age that I am.
It's so sad.
It's very, very, very sad. Happens to live 3 doors from me. And if you think about the image you have of a rock star, when you think about a guy putting the trash out in his underwear, it quickly loses its luster.
I didn't know you were looking, Terry.
But what I know about Tom is that he's got an international presence. He's an artist. He's a musician. He's obviously a gifted writer who published a great book last year. But more importantly, he is an incredible and committed citizen in Hamilton, passionate about social justice, about reconciliation, about the environment, and he also happens to be a really decent human being and a good neighbor. So I'm thrilled that you would take the time. I was teasing Kojo that early in the morning is not generally the time you associate with musicians, because your lifestyle and your timing is a little different than mine.
Not really, Terry.
Well, okay.
I see you in your underwear.
It's not a pretty sight. Now let me tell you about my friend Kojo, Easy Damptey. Again, I didn't meet him through his music. I'm an old basketball player, a broken down old point guard, and we have this crappy beer league basketball game that happens at a Montessori school in Dundas on Monday nights. School's owned by Tony Evans, who some of you may know, because his dad is our mutual neighbor, John. And it's populated by a bunch of Hamilton musicians and then the occasional invited guest. And so I get to match up with Max Kerman on some nights, and even though I give up 30 years, I try to hold him to account on the basketball court. And that's where I first met my buddy Kojo, who is a peaceful, gentle soul, except on the basketball court, where he has extraordinarily sharp elbows, and he makes the old guy work, I gotta tell you. So let me tell you about Kojo, because Kojo is, he's a transplanted Hamiltonian and has become a deeply committed citizen. And we'll talk about some of the stuff he does when he's not creating great music. But here's my formal introduction. Kojo Easy Damptey is an award-winning singer-songwriter born and raised in Ghana. His music strands genres from hip-hop, high-life music, soul music, and funk. He fuses these different genres to create what he calls Afro soul. His music is filled with poignant lyrics meant to address societal issues in an attempt to enact change in the world. His latest album is called Giants, Stories of Existence, Resilience, and Resistance. The other thing you should know about Kojo is he also, when he's not raising his 2 young kids with his wife and doing his music, is a leading voice around social justice, equity, and diversity with the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion, and I'm sure at some point we may chat about that today. Now to my friend Tom. He was raised in Hamilton and has built an international music career. He's fronted or played in bands including Florida Razors, for us old guys, Junkhouse, and Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. Great music, Blackie. Was also on George W. Bush's iPod. Have you lived that down yet? I remember.
It doesn't sound so bad now, does it?
I know. Indeed. We're going to get through this. Currently, he leads a psychedelic folk project called Lee Harvey Osment. And of course, I'm a Kennedy assassination junkie, so we may get to that at some point. No. In 2017, he published a memoir called Beautiful Scars, which I highly recommend to you. A great story of self-discovery. about his Mohawk heritage, and it's also the subject of Lee Harvey Oswald's 2019 album, Mohawk. He's also a visual artist. In 2015, Tom painted The Mystic Highway, a 40-foot-high mural representing Hamilton's rich musical history.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you both for being with us this morning and for being part of the conversation. And here's how this works. I throw them a couple of softball questions after having done the intro, and then we open it up to a not shrinking violet group of Hamiltonians to talk about whatever you want to talk about, provoke them, challenge them, comfort the afflicted, afflict the comfortable. But I'm going to start, Tom, with you, because you grew up here, and Hamilton has a rich musical history. We were just talking about Richard Newell, King Biscuit Boy. Kelly J just passed, sadly. But as somebody who grew up in our era, it's extraordinary to me that a place that wouldn't necessarily be associated with culture, art, creativity would have spawned as many great musicians as this place has. So talk to me about why you think that is.
I truly believe that it's a city, like a lot of small cities, smaller cities in the era, that arts, musicians, writers, they weren't getting patted on the head and told they were good boys and girls for doing what they're doing. Hamilton has a tendency to pat you less on the head and more give you a boot in the arse. And I think that that's one of the things that it inspires us, is that we are allowed to live on a bit of an island away from Toronto, respectfully, and we're able to form our own ideas and develop poetry and develop thoughts in a different way than if we were in a major center. I don't think that Hamilton is uncommon to a lot of smaller cities, as I said. I mean, if you really think about New York City, you know, Lou Reed came from Staten Island. Bob Dylan came from Minnesota. I'm just naming a few things here. Bruce Springsteen came from New Jersey. Nobody, you know, Charlie Parker came from Kansas City. You know, Miles Davis wasn't from New York City. The great writers, you know, the poets, they weren't from Manhattan. They were from other places that went to New York because there was a lot of people and there was a lot of like-minded people that they not necessarily, maybe they could develop what they had started, but it definitely started in another place. I think Hamilton is an example of that.
Now I'm going to put you on the spot because you wanted to make a statement.
Well, it's less of a statement and just a piece. You know, I'm very honored, I have to tell you, to be asked to be here. I speak at universities and at literary gatherings all over the country, and I never get asked to speak in Hamilton. I thought you guys didn't like me for a minute, so I thought, and also, you know, I've had friends that are politicians that I've gone with to gatherings, and they feel compelled to make a speech. And I roll my eyes and think, you know, you don't really have to make a speech here. It's just people drinking beer and, you know. But I've started writing my second book. And so now every time I go to do something, I write a little piece and type it out really awkwardly on these sheets on I have a crappy printer too. So I'm here just to read a little piece because I never get to talk about Hamilton music or asked to talk about Hamilton music in this way. So I'm going to read this little piece that I can't remember because, as Terry said, I am 60 years old. And I suppose you brought me here to talk about the music scene, but what I'm really interested in is talking about Terry's first question, which is what comes out of here creatively, because that is the foundation, not necessarily what gig you have on a Wednesday night in Hess Village. That's a boring discussion, and that's just work. But it's the ideas that are formed because of the geography and the people and the way we treat each other in this city. I'm an old man, or at least I'm older than I was when I started writing and playing music in this city 45 years ago. And I just have to look out past Gore Park and see the ghosts of my past. Around the corner on John Street is where I stole my first guitar from Waddington's Music. It was an act of survival, but still one that I don't regret. And I guess you can say that maybe I was desperate to play music, desperate to create, and desperate for my voice and what I created to be heard. Directly across the street, just over here, there used to be a bar called Duffy's. It was taken over by a guy who ran the Greek mafia in town. He called it Tilly's, which I have no idea why he changed the name, but that was the first place that I ever had a gun pointed to my head. Just the first time, really. It happened on the floor of the kitchen when I tried to collect my pay after a show. I did that. I got through that night, and I guess you say that I learned about a good lesson about dealing with the mob at the age of 20. I kept going, though. It didn't deter me. I guess you could say that I was desperate. Next door to Duffy's or Tilly's, and does anybody actually remember that bar? Whew. I guess everyone else is dead. Next door to that, out in front of the old Kresge store, is where two skinny French-Canadian kids with giant afros used to sell LSD. They were the Lanois brothers. They took that money, they saved it, they built a recording empire that changed the face of modern music. I guess that you can say that they too were desperate. Later, they would make Hamilton the birthplace of ambient music, along with their pal, Brian Eno. Desperation is what has made great art in this city since You and I Were Young, Maggie was written just south of here. It's where the Washington brothers played and sang like their lives depended on it, and made friends and housed people like Billie Holiday and Duke Ellington when they came to town, because Billie Holiday and Duke Ellington sure weren't staying at the Connaught Hotel in those days. Desperation is still in the sound of Harrison Kennedy. You can still hear Motown's chairman of the board singing, "Give me just a little more time." Desperation is what the great New Orleans writer and producer Alan Toussaint and blues giant Muddy Waters heard in Hamilton's King Biscuit Boy. I felt desperation for the first time when I was 11 years old. I was going up the Jolly Cut, and I heard "Oh, What a Feeling." It was blasting from CKOC on my mother's car stereo, and when the song ended, the DJ said, "That was the #1 song in the country by Hamilton's own Crowbar." I've been writing about this town my entire life. It's my muse, and it always will be. And that's what Hamilton music should be about. I wrote about Hamilton up and down on the first Junk House record, my first gold record. I wrote about all these things that I knew about Hamilton. They always say your first record is a collection of everything you've done in your life. And it wasn't until I was in Germany being interviewed by Rolling Stone that the interviewer said, "Tell me about the Skyway Bridge, and tell me about the steel companies and the TH&B railway line, and tell me about what is a Hamilton Mountain." And I have to admit that I was brought to tears that somebody was interested. I was brought to tears because I had made that record and nobody in Hamilton really said anything about it or acknowledged that it was about our hometown, except for a guy begging for change out in front of the Dundurn beer store. And he was the guy that said, "Hey man, thanks for writing about Hamilton. It really made me feel proud to be from here." Once again, I started my answer with Terry by saying, Hamilton doesn't pat you on the head. It kind of kicks you in the ass, and that's kind of what keeps us going. I was asked about a lot of other things over the years about Hamilton, some things not so good. I always stood up for this city. The thing that this city needs to grasp is what happened here and what will continue to happen without any power from people in Hamilton. It's the artists playing off the greatness of this city. It's homegrown balls and piss and blood. And it's what sent our fathers to work with their lunch in a pail and sometimes brought them home with black eyes from the bar. What we can't let happen is let the past disappear under the heel of gentrification and the great house deals that you can get here. We need to speak loudly for the living and honor the dead in a higher ground respect. We must preserve the thing that preserves us, the writers, the poets, the musicians, the artists, and the magicians that separate us, Hamilton, from the rest of the world. Hamilton musicians and artists are the ambassadors for this city. We must raise the flag, build statues, nail up brass plaques, and honor who is here and brag about who is coming up behind them. These are the people who represent this city to the world, the ones who create a powerful, honest, thoughtful picture of what we are. The definers, if you will. No politics, no rewards, no chest beating, just love. Some cities look better in the rain, but Hamilton always looks better when you hear it coming from Hamilton artists.
Wow. I hope somebody got that. Thank you. Great start. Kojo, that's a tough act to follow.
No, it's not. We're both artists. We hold our own.
Your journey has been different because you chose to come to Hamilton, and I want you to talk a little bit about that and about the experience of making music in a place that is your adopted hometown.
Yeah. So for me, I when I finished high school in Ghana, I was 17. I didn't want to leave Ghana. I love my home country, always will. But my parents said, we don't want you to go to university here in Ghana. You should go to Hamilton. I was very upset because I had my high school sweetheart. But, life gives you some curveball. So regardless to say I had to come, I got here. Studied engineering at McMaster, and in the course of being at Mac, I started falling in love with music. So I used to make music with a gentleman called K-Sun. He's now in Montreal, still making music, and so that was the start of my music journey. And we used to dabble in like hip hop. R&B, that was kind of our thing, and I must say it was very hard to like get into the scene because I think Hamilton has a great history of music and arts, but then when you're not from here, and you're making music that is not typically the music that comes out of the city, you tend to face some barriers. But my first show was at the Casbah. It was a hip hop show that was organized by Leon Robinson, who used to own a store right at the corner down there. Great artist himself. So that was how we broke into the scene of hip hop. And then we met other people that were making hip hop in the city, learned about the history of hip hop in the city. So that's how I started, and I think I used to do production. I would play keyboards in K-Sun's band. And then eventually I transitioned to becoming, making my own music and performing and what have you. So Yeah.
You didn't mention that you fell in love while you were here too.
Yes, I did. I did.
It's just a small oversight.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So I did. I did meet my partner at McMaster. We were both volunteering at CFMU. She had a show, and I was doing ads for CFMU, and Jamie Tennant was a great guy. I had to deal with sometimes, but great guy. I love him. So yeah, so it was just that was my foray and entrance into the music scene in Hamilton.
Thank you. My last question to you both, and then we're going to open it up. I know from talking to each of you that you feel a special responsibility as an artist to talk about social justice. And Kojo, I'm going to come to you second, but I want to ask you about your work with HCCI and the challenges around diversity and inclusion that are very much forefront of community concern in Hamilton as we speak. And Tom, I'm going to turn to you first because there's a great YouTube video I've seen with you talking about growing up around Locke Street, which both you and I share. And in Lean on Your Peers, you talk about Fireball on Hunter Street, guy jumping out of the top of the building.
That's right, yeah.
My grandparents ran the fish and chip store at the corner of Hunter and Locke,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
for 50 years. But in that YouTube,
Thanks for listening, by the way.
Well,
you and the guy in front of the Dunder
No.
and Beer store.
anything your daughter sends me, I pay attention to. You talk about the difference on Locke Street, which was a blue-collar street when I grew up, motorcycle gangs hanging out, and you specifically reference $500 cars when we were kids versus $500 strollers today.
$3,000.
What? Exactly. So talk to me about concerns about the changes that are happening here, some of which obviously are really good things. When you have new blood, new talent, new investment, all that stuff coming here, that can change in good ways, but it also threatens some of the things that are important to us, including not leaving people behind. And
That's right.
I know you feel strongly.
It's a big deal to me. The first time I ever read any article on it was coming from Spike Lee about the gentrification in Brooklyn.
Yep.
And I found that really interesting. And then it started to happen here, and I realized that I didn't feel the same way as Spike Lee about that necessarily, but I more or less felt empowered to not let our past disappear, that people are moving here, they're raising families, they're not from here. I've been to social gatherings where people have said, oh, so where are you from? So I'm from Hamilton. Yes, I know, but where were you born and where did you grow up? From fucking Hamilton. I told you already. That's the only time I could possibly get close to infuriated about that. But I know that if we actually pay attention to the things that built us, and it's not old man reminiscing, it's not living in the past. It's just allowing our past to always be present for generations to come, because where I learned how to be inspired, where I learned the sound of desperation came from those people before us. Probably the same for you. Where you're from, the people in your community were the first people to inspire you artistically. That's an important factor. And if we lose that, then we've basically lost our identity, and we might as well just give in to something new, which is great house prices. The thought that the greatest job as artists is to open the door of possibilities to the next person coming along. And I can say that, you can say that about anything in this world, and anything. You can say that about politicians or business, you know, or social movements, that the people who were there open the door of possibilities for younger people, for new artists, for new movements to come through, to people be able to say, I can do that. So for me, being able to survive as an artist, I would be doing an injustice to where I got my inspiration by not doing what looks like ridiculous things, but it's not. Should a statue of Frankie Venom be up in this city? Yes, it should. Should statues of Lanois or Biscuit Boy or Jackie Washington, should we be respecting and honoring those people in some way in this city? Yes, we should. Kelly J just died. And without a few people putting together a show at the Leander Both Club, Hamilton wouldn't even have acknowledged it or known about it. I think we have to stand up in the positions that we're in when we have the time. We're so busy, but we have to be able to put this into motion.
Thank you. Kojo, let me put a sharper point on the question to you, which is this community is struggling right now with a second awful occasion of violence at a Pride Festival at Gage Park. And you both have a professional role to deal with equity and inclusion, but I know you feel passionate about there being no two sides in any debate about hate. So talk to me a little bit about that and the challenges that we face in this community.
Yeah, so let me just say this. I think for me, social justice is like my first foundation. And regardless of where you may be from, right, our society always creates unjust systems, right? I look in this room and most of the room is made up of women. Let's think about this for a second. Women couldn't vote, right? That is a great injustice. And women fought for the right to vote. So if you use that as a template to say, who is always missing from being included in society? That should be the question that we should always ask when we are out and about, doing our art, going to work. Who are we missing? But we fail time and time again to ask that question. So we always leave people behind, especially when we are not the ones that are being left behind. Because obviously we are at the front of the truck or the train or the car. So those that are behind, we don't care until the truck becomes full and now we are part of those that are left behind. And then we start thinking, where do I stand, right? So I think for us, social justice is important because it asks us the question of, even if you're in the truck or you are ahead, you ask yourself, who are we leaving behind? I will use the example that has already been discussed here about Log Street. You were saying Log Street was hard-working streets. Now you go there, it looks like Toronto.
It's Queen Street West, reincarnated in Hamilton. It is.
So nobody is saying every street should be hard working and blue collar and whatnot. But we should ask the question, what does that mean for those that left? Where are they going? What are they doing now? What can we as a society do to support those that are leaving? But we never ask that question. But thankfully, we have artists. We get to spend some time at home thinking about that question, at least for those of us that write social justice stuff in our music. And that's what we give to society. Why am I saying all of this? Because all of that is still connected to what happened at Pride. We never ask the question of who is being left behind and how do we support them. So when folks with questionable ideologies show up at a place and incite violence, nobody is there to support them. And then the institutions that are supposed to step up and say, hey, look, you can't do that, they also fail us. So when we are failing residents that call Hamilton home, then we have a problem. And let's not for a second think that this has to just do with the 2+ LGBTQIA community. The foundation of this country is built on racist policy. What are we doing about that, right? So we have to think holistically about when we move forward, who is at the back? When we move forward, who do we displace? Those are things that we all have to think about in our work. And if we don't do that, then we are not fulfilling a full and just moving society. So I'll just kind of sum it up that way.
Well done. Thank you. So now the fun interactive part of the program starts, and all I want people to do is don't be bashful. Put your hand up, tell us who you are if you're so inclined, and then I will simply point the questions to whoever you want Kojo or Tom to respond. Who wants to go first? Fire away.
Hi, my name's Alex. I'm on the soccer field with my son.
Yeah.
My question is, how do we get that story out there? How do we get that desperation, that grit, which is so important to the music community, but also to all other communities in Hamilton? What are some ways that people can get involved? Because it's true, your past can determine your future.
Excuse me, go ahead.
Yeah, how to do it? I don't know. I had an idea once, and I think that if what the artists are doing and what they're producing actually has some kind of value to City Hall and to businesses in Hamilton, then it'll be an easier job. I mean, years ago, I think the downtown city business, I actually don't even know the organization, so I can't even, the downtown business people
BIA.
thank you. Oh my God, I need you everywhere I go. We're insulted and wanted some bylaw or a law that all rock and roll posters or all band posters were down in Hamilton. They didn't want any of that in downtown Hamilton. Meanwhile, those posters for whoever it was, the Forgotten Rebels or whoever it was, that was the only sign of life downtown at the time. It was the only sign that anybody was doing anything. So I think that we have to reverse that. And I would say that if we actually acknowledged the people who represent this city outside the borders, or we had some kind of understanding about that, all of a sudden artists, all of a sudden writers and actors and musicians, poets, all of a sudden they would have a more prominent role in defining the city, because they're going to do it anyway. The passion is already there. It's going to happen anyways. And you know what? My whole thing about honoring the past gets poo-pooed by, by younger musicians. But you know what? In 20 years and 30 years, it's going to be the Arkells, and it's going to be Tara Lightfoot, and it's going to be the Dirty Nil that opened up the doors of possibilities to the next generation of artists. And they don't necessarily have to be playing guitars. They just have to be realizing they're the people that made other people realize that it's possible for them to do it.
My name's Chris. One of the things, just to take on what you said there, Tom, when people ask me what can somebody do for artists, wherever they are, whether they're painters or writers or whether they're musicians, is that it's going to sound silly, but it's buy something. If you really want to support artists in the city of Hamilton, then you go, but when you're on James Street on the Friday night, buy something. Because the way you're going to support those people is by actually contributing so that they can stay vital. I read something where it said not that long ago, a successful artist in Canada 2006 or something, made $17,000. So if we want to keep a vibrant art scene, then we need to, first, what I do is I buy stuff.
Yeah. And Chris, let me just riff off that and take the moderator's prerogative for a second, because I think the other thing, in addition to being citizens who are engaged and prepared to purchase and support, even if it's buying a ticket, institutions have an obligation, to not expect artists to work for free at your event and to contribute in meaningful ways. I'm really proud that if you looked at our last annual report that Chris Frias did, we commissioned a bunch of original works of art to really enhance the stories we were trying to tell. And that too is a great source of inspiration for institutions and allows us to make a contribution in the way that you've talked about. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
No, you're allowed to rip on that. No, so that was my statement. My question is again, this attempt to make a connection between, let's call it city government. We used to call it the establishment, but now we can call it city government because the establishment also includes business leaders and things. It seems to always, and especially in a city like Hamilton, it seems that the lack of interest is still quite high in those things. I've seen lots of improvements here. So how do you think that civic engagement, and how is that supposed to move forward?
Great question. By the way, before I turn it over to the panelists to respond, you'll notice that Tom and I, who used to occasionally be critical of local politicians, since his ex-wife, who he's still close to, and my wife got elected in the last year and a half, we've become we see the wisdom of local political leadership. But go ahead
and I can say both of them are doing a great job, by the way. So first off, I'd like to give a shout out to a couple of people in the room. So I have some folks from the city. Debbie, wave. And then Jen, wave. And Maria, well, she's not from the city, but I'll tell you where she's from. And then Jeff, wave. Yes, so all of them are part of what we call the Hamilton Music Advisory Team. Jeff used to be the former chair, and he did some great work to ensure that musicians are being propped up in the city. So if you could please give them a hand for their work. There is no doubt that city government has to be involved in the arts, particularly with music. There are big challenges. You can talk to Jeff. He will let you know what those challenges are. But at the same time, we still have to work with what we have. So I think our team, under the leadership of Dr. Disk, Mark, we have a City Monday event during the summer where emerging musicians perform. They are paid. And then we have a musician conference for emerging artists that is in October. So those are things that the city is behind. Could they do more? Yes, they could do more. But I think these are minor steps. There's also the City Enrichment Fund. The total fund is $6.2 million, of which a section goes to arts organizations and individual artists. So I think these are minor steps, but then we still have to push them, talk about it, ensure that we're talking about the history of artists and also the future. In my work, I've always complained that, when it comes to hip hop, soul, funk, and R&B, we don't support. It's gotten me into trouble a couple of times. It's all good. I hold no grudges. But I still think it's important because Tom mentioned it. we are also trying to ensure that those that are in high school that want to pursue music as a career have it easier than we did, right? So at the end of the day, that is what we are trying to accomplish while we do our own careers and also have a good pathway for those that are yet to come.
Great answer. Tom, same question. What can the civic administration, others, and institutions do to make the pathway easier?
I actually have no idea. I'm not as well versed as you. Jeff is a friend. I've watched him, knuckle and elbow his way to get things done. It's a tough job, mainly because I have to say that the arts are not in the forefront of our consciousness. It's not a real concern. Something like this is the reason why I wrote that piece, is because this is really important to me, that I get to speak to people who are just a little bit interested. I have to say that I don't picture the way a civic city hall or government or anything can help artists, because I believe that artists really have to be the guys in there fighting. I learned from a Hamiltonian, Terry. I learned from Bill Powell. Bill Powell, love him or lump him, and I did both. Was a guy that taught me. Now this is a guy that put a festival together in Hamilton that's still going on today, long before the slogan "Art is the new steel" was ever even thought about. Nobody gave a shit about what he was doing, but he kept doing it because he had the burning passion. He also taught me that you gotta be, he never stated this, but I watched him, you gotta be 60% artist and 40% carny to survive. So what does it take? I'm not proud of all the things that I've done in my life by any means, but I've sold vinyl records out of the back of my car. I've also sold weed out of the back of my car. I once in Ottawa, Ontario, sold the shoes off my feet and played the next night with no shoes so that the band had enough money to eat. Thinking on your feet. I don't know where you learned that. I learned that from Bill Powell. He's long gone. I don't know who the next Bill Powell is to learn off of, and please do not look at me. So I'm sorry, Terry, I come up short on an answer on this.
But what great memories, because my first assignment as a 24-year-old elected official was to have my next door neighbor, Bill Powell, suggest I join his board at Creative Arts, and that's partially why I have no hair left on my head. What an extraordinary human being, and you are absolutely right in your description of Bill. Yeah. He was passionate, sometimes unreasonable, and relentless about support for an important sector at a time when nobody thought it mattered.
And it really is the guy it's that kind of personality that we need. Yeah. Maybe it's you, maybe it's you. And I'm not joking.
Absolutely. I'm going to go right here. You've been very patient.
We run into each other a lot at different events, and sometimes I notice that really representation, like you're saying, is only of a certain type of music, a certain type of person. And I notice that all over Hamilton. I notice Hamilton's very cliquey, and things are changing with the gentrification, and things are changing with new people coming in, lots of immigration to Hamilton, which is great, but still very super cliquey town. So how do we, when you can just see who wins awards? It's always the same people rotating through. And so just wondering, what can we do concretely to change this? Awards are a whole different thing, but is there anything that we can do, since we're aware of it, to actually let other people to the table?
Yeah, so let me say, it's good to have cliques. My music circle is it's a clique, but I think the thing is to reach out to other people that are making music in the city, right? So when people call me and say, we have a show coming up, are you interested? The first question I ask is it paid? If it's paid, oh, good. But then I also suggest other musicians, other upcoming musicians, right? Like, I don't have to play all the shows because I know that they are only calling me because, one, I do different, I have a different genre of music, and they are calling me because either somebody told them about me or they've seen me somewhere, and that's the only person they know. So then now that's the opportunity for me to say, hey, there's a new kid on the block called English, and they do electronic music. Then that's an opportunity for them to do that. So I think people should think about doing that a lot, suggesting other people that don't have the opportunity or are up and coming. Because I learned this early in my day. I always wanted to play festivals in Hamilton. I'm not going to say which festivals because I'll get in trouble again. But I have I haven't played some of the major festivals here. That's fine, right? But then that's what led me to start my own festival, right? So I started Renaissance Music. Unfortunately, we're not having it this year, obviously because of provincial funding, but that's another discussion. But in the 5 years that I've started my festival, we've had over 40 emerging artists come through, and we've paid all of them. The whole 5 years, we've paid them over 20,000, right? And that's through my own organizing, other musicians that support the type of music that we're doing. So I think those are the things. And then when people hear about my festival, now they know about the emerging artists that are in the city. So now they can also book them as well. So those are the things that we can do to say, this is how we kind of break out of the cliques and learn about up and coming musicians.
Tom, same question.
What was the question again?
How do we break the cliques? How do you provide space and opportunity for voices that wouldn't necessarily be at the table, the festivals, the headline acts?
This guy's got it right by putting together his own festival. And I love that is what you're working on. It's like, that festival won't happen, do it myself.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's the spirit that we're talking about. I know that, you know, you can try and take on, with this idea that we're talking about, you can try and take on the entire city, and it's going to be tough, you know. Tim Potachuk, he puts together a massive event, you know, one that as a Hamilton artist, I'm not sitting waiting for my phone to ring from him because he's got other things to do. I mean, I've never looked at this city. I love living here, but for the most part, I've always been happy being, oh, that guy, he's that puffy, sweaty guy I see in Fortino's all the time, right? That's the guy I like to be in Hamilton. I've never relied on this city to make me, you know, to pay for my house or make me any money, to be quite honest with you. An idea that we had, and that I think is a good idea, and if I was to put it out there to this room years ago, and I can only speak off of my own experiences. My daughter, Madeline, and I put together an idea to put a neighborhood concert together, a neighborhood concert series. And the reason being is years ago, Sarah Harmer did a show at the Melrose United Church in support of the escarpment and awareness. And I was coming home from Toronto, and I was getting off the bus, and I was walking up Locke Street, and all these people, as I walked up to my house, all these people were coming out of their homes all at the same time, going somewhere. It was like a sci-fi movie, and I didn't know where they were. I couldn't figure where they were going. And I stopped someone I knew. They said, oh, Sarah Harmer's playing at Melrose United Church. And I immediately understood the idea of community and the feeling of community and all being a part of an event. So we put together a concert series because, to me, you know, having that same thing happen in that neighborhood could happen in any neighborhood. And my idea was, you know what? Let's get Betty Levette. Betty Levette, she played at the Kennedy Center. She performed for the president Let's get her on Lock Street. Nobody could believe that, you know, I mean, either people just went because they wanted to see what Betty LaVette was about, but it was like, that's in our realm of possibilities. Now, you got to believe that bringing the Betty LaVettes and the Wanda Jacksons and the Bare Naked Ladies or whoever the hell it is into your community rather than putting them downtown in the big concert hall is going to grow, because the people who love music are suddenly in one place and they're saying, you know what? I've heard of this chick named Sarah, named Tara Lightfoot, you know, or I've heard of this group, or I'm going to see, you know, somebody play somewhere, and all of a sudden you've got just a buzz. And I think a buzz is really what we have to get going in this city. And your festival is a fantastic idea, and anything I can do to help you, I would do. But if every neighborhood, if there was a same kind of thing we did at Melrose up at the old Mountain Theater, which I don't know the name of, if we had it happening down at the Playhouse on Sherman Avenue, then all of a sudden, all the people that you didn't know that were in your neighborhood that loved music are all of a sudden all together, and all of a sudden the communities are interested in one thing.
Amen. And as a kid who grew up at Melrose Church, I got to tell you, I was never particularly inspired at Sunday school, but watching Jim Cuddy in my old church was an inspiring moment. One of the things we're always mindful of at these events is to honor your time, and we always promise to get you in and out on time. I'm going to take one additional question, and then I'm going to wrap up with some thank you. So would anybody got a burning question they want to put to Tom or to Kojo to put a bow on this thing? Oh, go ahead.
I just want to do this. Sorry, Kojo, when you said that you weren't called, you weren't asked to play at that festival, and then you said, and that's all right. And I agree, do your own thing is cool too. But when you said that's all right that you haven't been called, inside of me I thought, no, that's not all right. And no, I'm just saying, I don't think it's all right at all. I think when there's 4 stages, one of them should be reserved for local people, and I think that's also part of it. So I just reacted to that, and I just want to say I agree with everything you did, but on that part I don't.
There you go. You know, both of these guys have been known to piss people off from time to time. I'm glad we've continued that honorable tradition. Let me do a couple of things now. First of all, I want to thank the folks on our team who helped to put today together. Michael Paredes, who's hiding behind the divider here. Alan Enriquez, Teresa Silvestro, Grace Diffie. Thank you all for making it happen and allowing us to be up here. Thank you all for coming and demonstrating your interest in Hamilton and the conversations that we need to have. But most importantly this morning, I want to thank 2 good friends for really thoughtful, passionate presentations. And on behalf of the community and the Community Foundation, we're going to give them a token of our gratitude and actually a check to send them on their way and to acknowledge the important work they continue to do in this community.